This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So Bob Mueller's book report on his report. Yesterday, Volume 1, final answer.
The first volume of the report details numerous efforts emanating from Russia to influence the election. This volume includes a discussion of the Trump campaign's response to this activity, as well as our conclusion that there was insufficient evidence to charge a broader conspiracy.
All right, insufficient evidence, meaning no conspiracy to collude with foreign agents that necessarily would include the president. That's what's called an exoneration. Mueller final answer, Volume 2.
So that was Justice Department policy. Those were the principles under which we operated, and from them we concluded that we would not reach a determination, one way or the other, about whether the president committed a crime. That is the office's final position, and we will not comment on any other conclusions or hypotheticals about the president.
Right, because I don't want to take questions about some of my seemingly obvious contradictions in terms of positions and the basis for those positions, and then positions or decisions I made that run contrary to the principles I outlined. For example, in fairness, I don't want to make accusations, so I'm going to insinuate them instead.
Right, the wink, wink, nod, nod. Now the ball's in your court.
I don't know if that really comports with the spirit of fairness, but okay. DOJ protocols prevent us from reaching a determination as to obstruction with respect to the president. DOJ protocols also demand that people like me not make extrajudicial statements about people who are accused such that it would increase the public condemnation of the accused. But I didn't mind violating that public or DOJ protocol.
And he also, say he is not going to testify before Congress, so don't even give him a subpoena. That's the message he got across yesterday and left Americans with a message.
And I will close by reiterating the central allegation of our indictments, that there were multiple, systematic efforts to interfere in our election. And that allegation deserves the attention of every American. Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Great show.
Bye. He retired and
bye
walked
forever,
off
Lincoln Chafee.
Bye.
So here's the thing. Right. Those people who allegedly hacked the election, they are afforded the presumption of innocence. Trump has to be cleared by Mueller before we can provide any similar presumption to him. Interesting, shifting standard. And Bob.
Bob, can we bother you, Bob?
I'm confused. The DOJ protocol didn't prevent you from exonerating the president, making a determination with respect to conspiracy to collude, but it does with respect to obstruction. So the protocol doesn't apply to the predicate issue, but it applies to the subsequent one. Huh. And Bob, back in 1998, Ken Starr's report, Department of Justice was still around at that time, 20 years ago. He outlined 11 grounds for the impeachment of President Clinton. Was that a violation of protocol, or is that something you could have done if you wanted to, or? A lot of confusion that needs to be cleared up. To help us do that, we're pleased to be joined by Rich Lowry, who is the editor of National Review, Fox News contributor, author of the book Lincoln Unbound. I don't know if he shares John Voight's view that President Trump is the greatest president since Lincoln, but we can ask him. Rich, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. I don't think I can clear up any of the confusion. It's utterly confounding performance from beginning to end. I think the thing about Volume 1 and Volume 2, and you're right to hit on that seeming contradiction, I think Mueller would say, because of this OLC guidance, I had to invent a new legal standard, which is You need to clear the bar of exoneration. So it's no longer that I need to find you guilty. I need to find enough evidence to say you're exonerated. So I could do that in Volume 1 on Russia, but I couldn't do it in Volume 2. And the not exonerated standard is basically a nod and a wink, as we saw yesterday, saying he's guilty.
Right.
I just can't say he's guilty because of this OLC standard. And this is just so, thanks to my colleague Andy McCarthy, a former prosecutor who knows all this stuff cold, I've focused a lot on the special counsel regulations. And this guy, he's supposed to act like a U.S. attorney. He's supposed to follow every rule, regulation, norm in the Justice Department. And those regulations say explicitly what special counsel does. He produces a confidential report to the Attorney General about why he decided to prosecute or declined to prosecute. That's it. So under that regulation, I would read it as meaning as soon as he reads the OLC and says, I can't reach that determination, then he gives his report to the Attorney General and says, you know what, I'm not going to be able to prosecute because we say we don't prosecute presidents. End of story. And it's a one-page report at the beginning of this whole process rather than a 400-page report or a 200-page report on obstruction at the end. So somehow he escaped the regulations. He was not properly supervised. I think Rod Rosenstein has a lot to answer for here. I think he was scared, Rosenstein, politically, to exercise any supervision. So he just did all this on his own. No one knew what he was how he was writing the report or that he was declining to reach a decision until right at the end. No one told him that that was the wrong way to do it. And no one really knew he was saying at this press conference or stopped him from having the press conference. So he just made up all his rules as he went along, the way old independent counsels did, in a way that the law was changed and the regulations were changed to avoid. But he did it anyway.
So do you think he was inviting Congress to impeach Trump?
Yes. Yeah, I think, between the lines, if you read it really technically, there's nothing new that he said yesterday that wasn't in the report, but what he emphasized, what he chose to say, was, I think, clearly meant to read between the lines. He obstructed justice. I just couldn't say so, and it's up to you to do something about it.
Right, and so the Democrats are hanging their hat, as Jonathan Chait, the headline in his piece in the New Yorker, Trump is not a criminal. That's good enough for us.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of Jonathan Chait headlines ordinarily, but it's correct. I mean, that's what Mueller said,
right? And
that's a travesty under our system. This is why we have an entirely different legal standard throughout centuries of Anglo-American legal history. There's been a presumption of innocence to avoid exactly this. The burden has to be on the accuser. It has to be on the state. It can't be on the target. And what Mueller's done is switch it all around and said because Trump could not, to his satisfaction, establish his innocence, therefore he's not exonerated. And that's crazy. And if this was happening to anyone else, the ACLU would be through the roof. The ACLU would be raising millions of dollars to crusade to make sure this never happened to anyone, anywhere in America, ever again. Because it's Trump, no one on the left, with the honorable exception of Alan Dershowitz, has even batted an eye.
Now, the parallels between Comey and Mueller are starting to stack up. The extrajudicial statements we both referenced here. In addition, with respect to Mueller, the go forward to suggest that Trump, not a criminal, number one, but also that this standard is his standard of fairness. So sort of kind of making up standards, if not making up DOJ strictures.
Right. That's also crazy. So he says it would be unfair to accuse someone of a crime, say he committed a crime, if he couldn't defend himself in a trial. So instead he produces a 200-page report, in effect accusing him of a crime without a trial. So that just makes no sense. If he really had a fairness concern there, you don't produce a report like that, in effect accusing him of it. And that's exactly what he did. And he either, I can't decide whether he kind of cynically did this to kind of work around the system and work around the regulations to produce an impeachment report in a way that's not really contemplated by special counsel regulations, or whether there was some big argument over the state of the law in his office that he could never fully resolve. So he came up with this compromise, this sort of camel committee created camel of a legal standard that's been unknown in our system for the entirety of our history.
And the other parallel, but with Comey, is he gave both sides something. So he gave Democrats the wink and the nod, as you say, and they went running with it. But he also gave Republicans something. He is unwilling to testify on the Hill, and the Verises in the halls of Capitol Hill are all telling reporters, we need Nadler, we need Mueller before that Nadler Judiciary Committee. Nancy Pelosi even made that more explicit. So part of their impeachment strategy is Mueller on the Hill.
Yeah, so two things. One on Comey. I was pretty defensive of him during 2016. I thought he had a difficult problem. I obviously was not a huge fan of Hillary, but by the end, I realized you just can't go outside of the rules. Once you go outside the procedures, you don't know where to stop. And once Comey gave his initial statement, then he had to come back and give another statement right at the end of the election. That maybe had a big effect on the election in a way you're not supposed to as the FBI director, and it's because he talked in the first place. And so same thing here. Mueller just never should have gone around the regulations. Now, the congressional testimony I think is interesting because I opposed him testifying all along because I was like, okay, he has a 400-page report. Everyone can read it. They can decide. We don't need him to elaborate. The report itself is arguably inappropriate. So why does he need to do even more inappropriate things? But now that he went out and gave a statement anyway, what's the case for him not testifying before Congress? And I think he realizes that at some level, one, he was kind of the executive of this process, so he doesn't know every footnote in the report the way he might be grilled about before Congress, but also he'd get ripped to shreds, I think, but by both sides, because it's this weird middle ground position that doesn't make any sense under our law. So I think just in his self-interest now, he doesn't want to testify.
So where does this go from here? What's next?
It's not clear. A lot depends on Pelosi. She has the power and the standing to stop this if anyone can, but the momentum is clearly towards impeachment. The logic is towards impeachment. If you listen to Jerry Nadler yesterday, his statement, it's a statement that's supposed to be a holding pattern and justifying not going to impeachment yet, but you would think it was a statement you gave at the end of the impeachment process, right? It's utterly damning. And I just think the logic of that is going to erode the resistance to this. I also think there'll be arguments on the left. Look, Mueller served this up to Barr. Barr said there wasn't a crime. He was wrong about that. Now he served it up to us, and if we don't impeach, he's gotten away with it. And it's basically everyone saying there wasn't a crime here. So I don't know whether they're going to impeach him. I know the odds have increased.
He is Rich Lowry, editor of National Review, Fox News contributor, author of the book Lincoln Unbound. Rich, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Take care.
He joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.